So 9.4 is talking about ellipses, and remember that an ellipse is whenever you have the same sign, but the number in front of your squared terms is different. So if the signs are the same, numbers are the same, that is a circle. But if signs are the same, so they're both positive, then like positive, positive, and the numbers are different, then that would be considered an ellipse. So if you look at the pictures above on your notes, you'll see there are two types of ellipses. There is a horizontal ellipse and then a vertical ellipse. And so how you know the difference if it's horizontal versus vertical is the length of the major axis. So the one that is stretched further out kind of looks like an egg. So if it's facing sideways, that's horizontal. If it's facing up and down, then that would be vertical. And the only difference between the two equations is you'll notice that the a squared goes under the larger term. So for instance, if you have a horizontal and it looks kind of like a sideways egg, if you look at the picture, your a term is under your x's, and so what that means is like your x-axis is longer. So your a term always goes under the the major axis, or like the longest axis. So if it's an x, it's horizontal and it's going to go under the x squared. If it's a vertical, like the y-axis is longer, then it's going to go under the y-axis. So then we have things called vertices and co-vertices. Vertices will always go on the major axis. So the vertices are going to be my endpoints on the major axis. And then my co-vertices are going to be the endpoints on the minor axis. So endpoints on the major axis will be your vertices, co-vertices are endpoints on the minor axis, which is like the shorter length. And then foci is going to be the 2 points that are in the middle. So a focus was, remember, the one point that we put on the parabola. They'll always be on the inside of the ellipse. And the way that we find how to get the foci is using this equation right here. So we're going to take our a squared and our b squared, our two denominators, and we're going to subtract them. So we're going to take our bigger number, which will be our a squared, minus our smaller number, which is our b squared, and that's going to be our c squared. Then we'll need to square root it. So the best way to memorize all of this, or to do this, is just to have examples. So I'm not going to say that you need to memorize these types of things, but you will need to know how to do it. However, you will be given these formulas on a test or a quiz. So you'll be given these, but you'll need to know how to find these things. So you can add them to your foldable if you want. That could be helpful, or you can just try to memorize them. So if we look at number 1, it gives us this formula. I want to put it in standard form first. And by putting it in standard form, that means that it all equals 1. So I want to first divide by 100 on both sides. So when I do that, when I divide by 100, I end up getting x squared over 25 plus y squared over 4 equals 1. And if I'm comparing that to the general equation, I know it's going to be a horizontal because my bigger number, which would be my a squared, is under the x squared term. So since my bigger number is under the x squared, that means that it will be a horizontal. It'll be a horizontal ellipse because my bigger number is under the x squared term. So my center will be my HK. In this case, it's going to be at 0, 0 because there's nothing in parentheses. So it would be like saying x minus 0 squared and y minus 0 squared. So my center is at 0, 0. My A term is going to be the square root of 25. And 4 is my B squared. So my A would be 5, my B would be 2. And to find C, A squared minus B squared equals C squared. So C equals the square root of 25 minus 4, which gives me the square root of 21. So I'm just going to put the square root of 21 here. Then my vertices, so I'm going to plot my point at 0, 0. How to find my vertices, what I do is I take my center and I'm going to go 5 to the right and 5 to the left. The reason why I do that is because that is my major axis. And so I'm going to go on my x-axis 5 to the left, 5 to the right. So my vertices would be at negative 5, 0, and 5, 0. My co-vertices, I'm going to look at my B. B is my minor axis, so I'm going to go up 2 and down 2 from my center. So my co-vertices are at 0, 2, and 0, negative 2. Then to find my foci, what I do is I look at my center and then I add my C value and I subtract my C value towards my major axis. So I'm going to go to the left and to the right because my major axis is horizontally. So I'm going to add square root of 21. I'm going to subtract square root of 21. If you put that in your calculator, it is about 4.6. I'm going to leave it at square root of 21, but when I graph it, I'm going to go about to 4.6 and to 4.6. So I'm just going to label my foci. So that would be at negative square root of 21, 0, and square root of 21, 0. Then I'm going to connect my dots on the outside of my ellipse, like this, and I have my two foci in the middle. The length of my major axis is 2 times A, so 2 times 5 is 10. The length of my minor axis is 2 times B, which would be 4. Alright, so for number 2, it is already in standard form because it equals 1, so that's nice. I don't have to do anything. My bigger number is again underneath my X, so 16 is under the X, so that means that it will be a horizontal. So the major axis will be on the X-axis. And it wants me to find the following. So the center will no longer be at 0, 0. It's at HK. So my H is going to be attached to my X. My K is attached to my Y. I change the sign. So negative 3, positive 2. A is the square root of A squared, so 4. B is the square root of 9, which would be 3. And to find C, I'm going to take the square root of 16 minus 9, which you get square root of 5. So my vertices, if I plot my center at negative 3, positive 2, to find my vertices, what I do is I go to the right and the left 4. The reason why I go to the right and the left is because it's a horizontal. So 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left. Those ordered pairs would be negative 7, 2, and positive 1, 2. So I just went to the right 4 and to the left 4 because that is my A. Then my co-vertices, I look at my B. My B is 3. So that means I'm going to start at my center and I'm going to go up 3 and I'm going to go down 3. So those ordered pairs would be -3, 5. And -3, -2. That should be -1, sorry. Not -2. I'm only going down 3. So then from there, I'm going to connect my dots. And to find my foci, I go from the center and I add square root of 5, and then I subtract square root of 5. So if you put this in your calculator, you get about 2.2. That's the square root of 5. So that's just to graph it. But whenever I find the coordinates, I'm going to take my x's and I'm going to add square root of 5 and I'm going to subtract square root of 5. So it'll be -3 minus square root of 5, 2, and -3 plus square root of 5, 2. So it's about 2.2, so I'm going to put a dot there and there. And all I did was I added this to the x values. I added and I subtracted it to the x values because your foci are always going to be on the same line as your vertices, whatever the major axis is. So the length of my major axis is 2 times A, so that would be 8. Length of minor axis is 2 times B, that would be 6. So as I was doing these notes, I realized that there aren't any vertical examples, so I want us to change this, this number 3. I want this to be 4, and I want this to be 25. So just go ahead and change that in your notes because I want to show you a vertical example. I think it'll be helpful. So it's already in standard form. The center is going to be still at HK. So HK would be at -2, +5. Whoa, don't know what happened. -2, +5. And the reason why it's vertical is because now the bigger number is under the y squared. So that's why that's what would make it a vertical, is that the bigger number is going to be under the y squared instead of the bigger number being under the x squared. So the major axis is now going to be the y. This is still, so now this is a squared and then this is b squared. So my a is still my bigger number, so the square root of 25 is 5. And the square root of 4 is 2. And the c is still found in the same way. Square root of a squared minus b squared. So square root of 25 minus 4, which is the square root of 21, which is what the example that we got from question number 1. So I'm going to plot my center at -2, 5. My vertices now, I'm going to count up and down 5. So up and down. The reason why is because I have a vertical ellipse. So that means I'm going to go up 5 and I'm going to go down 5. And my co-vertices, I'm going to use my minor axis. So I'm going to go left 2, right 2. So my vertices, the ordered pairs for those would be -2, 10, -2, 0. And my co-vertices would be at -4, 5, and at 0, 5. Then the square root of 21 is about 4.6. So I'm going to add 4.6, goes about here, subtract 4.6. Connect my dots. And I'm just changing my y values. So now my foci would be the x-axis or the x coordinate would always be -2. It would be 5 plus the square root of 5, and -2, 5 minus the square root of 5. Because I am changing my y coordinate. I'm not changing my x coordinate. The length of my major axis is 2 times a, which is 10. The length of my minor axis is 2 times b, which is 4. Okay, so the next example, it says write the equation of an ellipse in standard form, given that a vertex is at 3, 6, and a co-vertex is at 6, 2. So the best way for me to even attempt this problem is to draw a picture. So I'm going to do the best of my ability at 3, 6. And a co-vertex is at 6, 2. Like this. So I have a vertex and a co-vertex, and I know that my vertex is going to be my major length, so this is going to be the longer one. So my parabola is going to look something like this. That's kind of a best picture that I can do. Probably should have come in like right here. Not an artist, sorry. Let me erase this part just a little bit. There we go. Looks pretty good. Okay, so I have an ordered pair at, and I have a co-vertex at 6, 2. And so I would know that the center of just by looking at the picture, the center of my ellipse is going to be in the middle of these two points. So it's going to take the x value of my vertex, and it's going to take the y value of my co-vertex, because it's going to be in the same x-axis as my vertex. It's going to be in the same y-axis as my co-vertex. So my center is, just based off of this picture, is going to be at 3, 2. And I can do that by just looking at the picture. Then I need two other things. So I have my h and my k. And based off of I'm going to write just the general equation. So we have x minus h squared and y minus k squared. Now, if it is a vertical ellipse, which it is, then I'm going to put the a squared under the y, and I'm going to put the b squared under the x. And so if I'm solving the length of my major axis, then I'm going to take the distance from, so my major axis is going to be this length right here. The distance from my center, which is 2, all the way to 6. So that distance is 4. So my major axis length, or the distance, I guess, from my center to my vertex, A is going to equal 4. Then I'm going to look at my center, and I'm going to go to my co-vertex. So I'm going to look at this length right here. If I'm going from x equals 3 to x equals 6, that length is 3. So my minor axis, my b, is going to be 3. So then I plug in for a squared and b squared, and I plug in for h and for k, and that all equals 1. Forgot to add that in. And I'm just going to plug all 4 of those numbers in. So it would be x minus 3 squared over b squared, which is 9, plus y minus k, so minus 2, squared over a squared, which is 16, equals 1. Then I would be done. Number 5, write the equation of the ellipse with a major axis length of 8 and a foci at negative 1, 4 and 3, 4. So the way that I like to do this, I still like to draw a picture. So I'm going to draw, I have foci at negative 1, 4 and at 3, 4. This way. So here are my foci. So that means that it is going to be a horizontal because they're on this same y-axis. So it's going to look something like this, with my center in the middle, like this. Then the next piece of information that it gives me is that my major axis length is 8. So that means from end to end, or vertice to vertice, that is also 8. So what I need to solve for is I need to find this center. This center is going to be the midpoint between my foci. So the middle of negative 1 and positive 3. So I'm going to use the midpoint formula. And so I can do that by saying negative 1 plus 3 over 2 and 4 plus 4 over 2. And you end up getting a positive 1 and a positive 4. So my center is at 1, 4, and that also will be my H and my K. And I know that the length of my major axis is 8, so then I know that my A is going to be half of that, because that is 2A is equal to 8. So that means that if 2A equals 8, then A equals 4. So now I just need to find my B value. I don't know what B is, but I do know that the distance from my center to my foci is equal to C, and C squared equals A squared minus B squared. So the distance from my center to my foci is going to be 2. I'm going over 2 units, because if my center is at 1 and I'm going over to 3, then that is 2. C is 2 units. So 2 squared equals 4 squared minus B squared. And so then I get 4 equals 16 minus B squared. And B squared equals, if I move the B squared over, subtract the 4, 12. So B equals the square root of 12. And so then all I need to do is plug in A, B, H, and K into the standard formula. I can erase all of that. Since it is a horizontal, that means that A is going to go under the x squared. So it would be x minus 1 squared over A squared, so 16, plus y minus 4 squared over square root of 12 squared, so that would just be 12. Running out of room, sorry if you're running out of room, equals 1. So all of that equals 1, because I'm just squaring that, square root of 12. Okay, number 6, it says find the equation of the graph and then find the location of the foci. So what I do is I can just look at this equation, or look at this ellipse right here, and know that it is a horizontal. And so since it's a horizontal, I'm going to look at the end points Here and here would be my vertices. Those are the widest points of my graph. And then if I look at the top and the bottom, so my co-vertices, that would be the highest point and the lowest point. So I have, for vertices, I have -4, -1, and 8, -1. So the distance from -4 to +8, or the length of my major axis, is going to be 12. I'm going from -4 to +8. Length of major axis equals 12, which equals 2a. So a equals 6. So my center is going to be halfway between, which is at 2. Then my minor axis, so my co-vertices are at, 2, 4, and 2, -6. So the distance from those would be 8. So 10, I can't add. So minor axis is 10, which equals 2b. And so b equals 5. So all that you need when you're doing an ellipse equation, you need A, you need B, and then you need the center, which is HK, 2, -1, HK. It is a horizontal, so a squared is going to go under the x. So my standard form equation would be x minus 2 squared over a squared, so 36, plus y minus k, so y plus 1 squared, over b squared, which is 25, equals 1. Okay, then the last 4 examples are going to be completing the square. So this is kind of a review, but let's just go over a few of them. So remember that when you're completing the square, you want to get the x's together. So I'm going to put 4x squared minus 8x together. And then I'm going to put my y squared, so plus y squared. There's no other y. Then I'm going to move my constant over, equals 8. So then I need to complete the square on the x squared. So if I'm going to do that, I need to pull out my 4, and I'm left with x squared minus 2x plus blank. Plus, since there's no like single x or y term, I'm just going to leave y squared equals 8 plus blank. Then I take the -2 and I cut that in half. So I get -1, -1 squared is 1. And then in this blank, I take 4 times 1, which would be 4. So then I factor 4x minus 1 squared plus y squared equals 12. Then I want to put it in standard form. So standard form is x minus h squared over a squared plus y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. So basically, once you complete the square, you want 1 on the right side. If I have 1 on the right side, right now I have 12. If I want to get 1 on the right side, I need to divide both sides by 12. So I'm going to divide everything by 12. So what happens on the left is my 4 over 12 reduces, and I'm left with 1/3. So it would be x minus 1 squared over 3 plus, nothing can happen to the y squared over 12, equals 1. For number 7, I'm going to get the x's together and the y's. So I'm going to put 2x squared minus 4x plus y squared equals 4. Now I want to complete the square for the x squareds. So 2x squared minus 2x plus blank plus y squared equals 4 plus blank. Then I take my middle term and I half it. So -1. -1 squared is 1. And then 2 times 1 is 2. Then I factor. So multiplies to get -2, or as to get -2, multiplies to get +1. X minus 1 squared plus y squared equals 6. Then I want my right side to equal 1. So I divide by 6, divide by 6, divide by 6. And so you end up getting x minus 1 squared over 3 plus y squared over 6 equals 1. Try number 8. Gonna separate, so 9x squared plus 18x plus 4y squared plus 8y equals a +41. So I moved that over and I moved the x's and the y's to the left because I want to group them together. So then when I look at my x's, I'm going to pull out a 9, x squared plus 2x plus blank. Then I'm going to look at my y squareds and I'm going to pull out a 4, y squared plus 2y plus blank equals, then I have 41 plus blank plus blank. So complete the square for x's. Half of 2 is 1, 1 squared is 1, and I add 9 because 9 times 1. For the y's, half of 2 is 1, 1 squared is 1, 1 on the left, 4 on the right. Then I factor, so 9 x plus 1 squared plus 4 y plus 1 squared equals 54. Then I want to get 1 on the right, so I divide by 54, divide by 54, divide by 54. Then I'm left with x plus 1 squared over 6, because 9 divided by 54 is 6, or 1/6, plus 54, 4 doesn't go into 54. So you have 2y plus 1 squared over 27 equals 1. And then you are finished. Okay, last one. Gonna get the x's together again. Get the y's together. And get the constant over to the right. Pull out a 2. Pull out an 8. Equals -74 plus blank plus blank. Then I'm going to complete the square. Half of -10 is -5. -5 squared is 25. 2 times 25 is 50. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 8 times 4 is 32. Then I'm going to factor this. So x minus 5 squared plus 8 y plus 2 squared equals -74 plus 50 plus 32 would be, let's see, 82 minus 74 would be 8. Then I'm going to divide everything by 8. And you get x minus 5 squared over 4 plus y plus 2 squared over 1 equals 1. And then you are finished.